What's up, guys? Outdoor Heretic,
And I'm Brax-Attacks.
and we're here to do an outdoor video for you. We're going to talk about, Brax, the 5 major differences between fishing in a boat and fishing on a kayak. And I'm going to elicit the help of my man, Brax-Attacks. All right, guys. The first difference in between fishing on a kayak and fishing on a boat is in the amount of gear that you can haul. You've probably been at the boat ramp and witnessed people putting Christmas trees and different things in their boat. Here in this picture, you could see my father-in-law fishing with 2 poles, vertical jigging. He has his tackle box behind him. He has his net behind him and has the amount of gear necessary on the boat for him to be able to sufficiently fish. Could you imagine trying all of this on a kayak? Here you can see my son, Brax, with a Christmas tree. How's he going to pedal or paddle with that Christmas tree? So the biggest difference to me is the amount of gear that you can actually haul. Here you can see 2 fishing poles and 1 big tackle box. All right, guys, just realized you might not know who I am because I didn't have my hat on. It's Sunday, and on Sunday, I got my church hair on. Readjusting in a kayak. One of the major differences is in the readjustment of your lines, your rods, in a kayak versus a boat. In a boat, you have more area, surface area, to set your pole aside and work on the tip. On a kayak, it can get pretty difficult. You can see Brax working on the pole here. Listen, he's smaller. Can you imagine if I was in my Old Town Predator MX and working on a 12-foot rod? The kayak's only 12 feet, which is a consideration if you're fishing in a kayak. I typically don't like to use anything bigger than an 8-foot rod. I realize now some of those guys out there like Wile E. Coyote and some of the guys on YouTube, they use those 10, 12-foot rods. I'm enamored. I'm amazed that they can use those big rods. I can't. I haven't graduated to that yet. I'm trying. But I am amazed at those guys. So definitely think about that. The readjustment on a kayak is more difficult than if you're on a boat. Readjusting in a boat is somewhat easier. You're able to lift your poles up, put them in a safe place while you work on your line. Fishing in a kayak may require you to get out of the wind, get out of the elements. But a boat gives you the room to work on these. Difference number 3 is at the speed which you can change. In a kayak, if you have to change locations, you waste precious fishing time. In a boat, you're able to move faster, sometimes going across the lake or the river in a matter of minutes. When in a kayak, it takes you twice as long. A major difference is in the speed at which you can move locations.
All right, some of you are telling me, tell me something I don't know. On a kayak, your sense of alertness has to be at peak at all times. Now that's not to say in a boat you don't have to be alert. You have to be alert. You've got to watch what you're doing. You got to watch where you're stepping. You got to watch casting your rod. You've got to watch when you're driving for other people. You got to watch out for those kayakers. But on a kayak, your sense of alertness has to be peak. One wrong move in the kayak and you're not in the drink, just you, but all that gear you take with you, tell your wife you're going to have to buy new gear. That's if you make it home. Alright, number 5 on the list of 5 big differences I found from fishing on a boat and a kayak is your proximity to the water. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. If you're on a small John boat, it's similar. But we're talking about medium-sized boats and bigger compared to a kayak. You're not even 6 inches from the water in a kayak, whereas a boat, you could be over a foot. Now, some of you are saying, why does that make a difference? Here's why. If you watch those guys that spotter rig for crappie, you'll notice, I said crappie, you'll notice that their rod tips are always down by the water. You know why? Because the impact of the wind. That's right. So wind can move your line, which impacts the presentation of your bait. So if you got a jig down and the wind's blowing 10 miles per hour, you've got to figure out how deep is my bait really going. In a kayak, you're closer to the water, so the wind will have less impact on the line. Now guys, do some common sense, if you have any, and figure out that if it's a 10 mile an hour wind, the impact's not coming from your line, it's coming from how it impacts you and moves the boat. Kayaks are going to move faster because they're lighter and your body's going to absorb that wind and you're going to move and probably be moving faster. However, your proximity to the water, which leads me to this, that proximity to water, you're also going to get a little wetter. Okay, not a little, a lot wetter. Is wetter a word? It is today. You're going to get wet.
Bam! There you have it, guys. You got the 5 things. The 5 major differences. Those are my 5 major differences of fishing in a kayak versus a boat. Now, I do mostly crappie fishing, which it's going to be similar for you bass fishermen or even you cat fishermen. It's really going to be similar. Let's refresh. The amount of gear you can haul more gear on a boat than you can a kayak. Look, this is my bag that I haul on a boat. This is my bag that I have on the kayak. I'm a minimalist. Minimalist. Meaning that I have packed all my crappy gear in here. I've got my scissors, I've got my net, I've got my grapple, I've got my jig bag, or my box. I've got my hook box with corks and other stuff. And I've just shrunk it down. I went fishing with my father-in-law the other day. He's got a toolbox, kind of a big toolbox. On a kayak, you've got to learn to shrink your gear down. A boat, you don't have to. The second thing is the speed, the readjustment. How fast can you get where you're going? On a kayak, if you've got a trolling motor, you might be able to readjust faster. I don't. I have to pedal or paddle or swim, one or the other. And pedaling is a lot easier. Still takes me about 2 miles per hour. I could go faster if I'd lay off those Little Debbie cakes. The third thing is readjusting. If you got to realign your poles, you've got to trade your bait, you've got to get out of the wind, you've got to move, you've got the conditions battering you, you better take some extra poles because it's harder to readjust on a kayak. Fourth thing is alertness. Got to be alert on the boat, but you got to remember, you've got to be peak on that kayak. You've got to know what is the other person doing. Is that boat coming towards me? What are they going to do? What's their intention? You better think about that. And then the last thing is closeness to the water to me. That's going to present some things for you. Can present that you're going to get wet, so you got to dress accordingly. Maybe you got to dress warmer than the guy who's on the boat and he's got my little buddy heater and he's staying warm. You're on the kayak, you're going to be wet 3/4 of the time. You're going to take splash, you're going to take some water. Those are the 5 major differences to me. Should that deter you from buying a kayak? Should that mean you should buy a boat? I don't know. I'd like to go buy a boat, but I love my kayak too. Would I get rid of my kayak to buy a boat? No. I might get rid of my canoe, but I wouldn't get rid of my kayak. I love my kayak. Love to fish off of a boat. So if you want to take me fishing on your big, nice boat that has heat, I'll go with you. Hey, if you like this video, subscribe, comment, like it. Tell me something good. 2021, let's be positive. Start off by subscribing and liking and comment. And we'll see you out on the adventure.